For years, nobody could say exactly who attacked Drakeo the ruler backstage the night he died. But now Drakeo's own bodyguard is accusing YG of stabbing him in sworn testimony, and he's reportedly leaking video evidence from that night. Things are suddenly looking very bad for YG. Let me catch you up. Bodyguard talks for almost 5 years. The story of Drakeo the ruler's death has lived in blurry cell phone clips and secondhand whispers about who was really in that crowd. Now, for the first time, a man who was standing right next to him has put a name on the record, and he did it under oath. His name is Ulrich Cooper III, though most people in the culture just call him Coop, and he has done security work tied to the no-jumper world. So he is no stranger to this scene. On the night of the festival, he was part of the personal detail hired to keep Drakeo breathing. Coop sat for a sworn deposition dated March 19, 2025, and those excerpts stayed buried in a court filing until they surfaced this summer and landed with the Los Angeles Times. The full transcript has never been released to the public, so everything the internet is reacting to comes from the portion that made it into that filing. Even that little slice was enough to set the timeline on fire, and it all came down to one name Coop kept circling back to. Cooper testified that Drakeo's group got cornered backstage by at least 20 to 25 people. When the family's attorney asked him whether he recognized anyone in that opposing crowd, he answered without hesitation, giving one name that was clear and specific. He pointed at YG, the Compton rapper born Kenon Jackson, and he said YG was front and center and directly involved in the brawl. That detail alone is heavy because plenty of names have floated around this case over the years, from bodyguards to affiliates to shadowy figures in red. Yet when a man who was physically guarding Drakeo got put under oath and asked point blank, the only person he named was YG. Every word of it came from what he says he saw with his own eyes, a face just a few feet in front of him in the middle of the chaos. This stands as the most detailed account of that backstage moment that has ever gone public, and it came from a man whose entire job that night was to stand between Drakeo and exactly this kind of danger. When the family's attorney pressed him on whether YG was truly in the thick of the fighting, Coop refused to water it down and put YG right in the middle of the chaos. And here's the kicker. Out of a crowd, he counted at 20 to 25 people deep, most of them masked up. YG was the one and only person he could attach a name to. Everyone else stayed a blur to him, while the man he says pulled a blade was, in his telling, impossible to mistake for anyone else. Here is the wild part. According to Coop, the man he identified as YG had his face covered the entire time. He was in a black balaclava that left only the area around his eyes showing, a black bomber-style jacket, black pants with red stripes running down the side, and shiny black shoes. So the obvious challenge came up in that deposition room. How do you name a man whose face is behind a mask? Cooper's answer was that he had been around YG plenty of times over the years, and he recognized the hazel eyes, the body type, the height, the walk, and the demeanor. He put the man at about 6'1" to 6'2", which lines up with YG's frame. Then Coop walked the room through the fight itself. He said he swung on one of the approaching men first and briefly lost his footing. And when he got himself back up, he was face to face with two people. One was the man he called YG, and the other was somebody he described as YG's own bodyguard, with Drakeo standing only a foot or two behind him and off to his right. That positioning is important because it put Drakeo within arm's reach of everything Coop says came next. In his testimony, YG produced a knife from his left hand, and it looked like the blade slid straight out of his sleeve. The second Cooper clocked the weapon. He backed off. He described it as a silver blade about 3 to 4 inches long, with no handle he could see, something he compared to an improvised prison shank. Other hands in that front line were holding steel too. Coop testified that YG was slashing at him with it, moving it in a way meant to force him backward. And when he looked around, he counted 2 more men standing near YG carrying the same kind of short blade. One of them was posted right beside YG, a bald black man around 5'9" or 5'10", with light brown or hazel eyes and a blue patterned crew neck shirt. The other stood behind and between them, a similarly built man with dreadlocks whose clothing Coop said he could not remember. He knew he was looking at blades because the motion was all wrong for a normal fight. Once he saw that stabbing, jabbing motion instead of ordinary swinging, he tried to peel away from all 3 of them. And the whole time, the crowd was talking. Coop remembered hearing lines aimed straight at Drakeo. Things like, "Is this Drakeo? Is that who I think it is? What you want to do?" And the coldest one of them all, "Now we finally got him." Layered under those words were blood gang calls moving through the group. Expressions like "Su whoop" and "sup," blood, and he watched some of them beating on their chests. Anybody who knows how these things move could hear it for what it was. That crowd came looking for one specific man, and by the sound of it, they knew exactly who they had found. The night he died. To understand why that testimony hit like a bomb, you have to rewind to the night itself. It was the evening of December 18th, 2021, and Drakeo, the ruler, born Daryl Wayne Caldwell Jr., was 28 years old and booked to perform at the Once Upon a Time in LA festival at Bank of California Stadium in Exposition Park. Around 8:30 at night, with his set only minutes away, everything backstage went sideways near the artist entrance. Eyewitness and family accounts describe a large group rolling up on Drakeo's much smaller entourage. The numbers depend on who you ask, ranging from around 20 to 25, all the way up to 40 to 60 people, a lot of them masked, a lot of them draped in red. That red carries real weight in this story, because it points to Blood's affiliation, and the tension in the air came from a long-running friction between Drakeo's Stink Team and circles tied to YG's 400 brand and his Treetop Piru Blood connections. Some accounts on the night pushed the crowd number even higher, with early talk claiming close to 100 people flooding the area around Drakeo. Somebody who was actually standing there that night described the scene in raw terms.
I was there when Draco got killed.
Damn.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah, that was scary.
That fear was earned because what Cooper described in his deposition reads like an ambush planned and one-sided. He said the attackers split into groups and surrounded Drakeo's party, and then the festival's own security turned a bad situation deadly. Security personnel failed to step in and instead closed two gates that could have been an escape route. In Coop's own words, they actually closed the gates and trapped us in to where we couldn't leave. One exit was blocked by staff while the attackers poured in from the other side. For a group that showed up already split into teams and already masked up, a set of locked gates turned that backstage area into a box with no clean way out. The same eyewitness on the ground remembered a wall of bodies and chaos. A lot of dudes on Drakeo, a lot of security, and a lot of cops all colliding at once, described in his own account of that night. Cooper said he struck one of the approaching men and briefly lost his balance, and by the time he steadied himself, the blades were already out, and Drakeo was right there behind him. Then the group pushed past Coop and swarmed over Drakeo, and police arrived almost at the same moment and started ripping the fight apart. By then it was too late. Drakeo had been stabbed in the neck.
You heard him getting stabbed.
Oh, yeah.
Draco getting stabbed.
Paramedics rushed him out of the venue. He reached the hospital in critical condition, and he was pronounced dead the following day, December 19th. The wound to his neck was the kind that leaves first responders almost no room to work, and even with a quick response, he never stabilized. A man who had spent years fighting the system and finally walked free was gone in a matter of minutes. A few steps away from a stage he never got to touch that night. The fallout was instant. Festival organizers shut the whole event down and canceled the remaining performances, which included sets from Snoop Dogg, 50 Cent, Ice Cube, and yes, YG himself. Early cell phone footage of the broader brawl started spreading online within days, and people were quick to point out figures in the crowd wearing YG's 400 merch. One clip that went around seemed to show someone swinging a blade toward Drakeo. Drakeo stumbling back, and then the next thing anybody saw was him on the ground bleeding from the neck. Another angle appeared to catch people struggling to push through a jammed gate, which lined right up with the gate story Coop told years later. Even with all of that, none of it clearly showed the face of who delivered the fatal wound. You could see the chaos, the swinging, and the panic, and then you could see Drakeo on the ground, but the one frame that would answer the only question that mattered never showed up. The sheer scale of what got shut down told its own story, because this was a stacked festival with some of the biggest names in the game on the bill, and the whole thing folded into a crime scene in a matter of minutes. The man who watched it all unfold walked away with one blunt takeaway: that rap shows had turned into genuinely dangerous places to even show up to. And when that same eyewitness got asked who was even behind it, his read was simple. That red from the ground matched what Drakeo's own camp was screaming from the very start. His associate K7 went on Instagram Live shortly after, and along with Drakeo's mother in later interviews, they framed the whole thing as a setup. They said dozens of people from the opposing side were somehow allowed far greater access backstage while Drakeo's smaller group got boxed in. And Drakeo's mother pointed hard at the fact that the attack unfolded right around the time YG and his people pulled up to the venue. Leading the homicide investigation was the California Highway Patrol, and as the months stretched into years, they kept coming up empty. No arrests, no charges. A beloved rapper stabbed to death in front of dozens of witnesses. And for nearly 5 years, the case just sat there gathering dust while his family kept begging for answers. Why YG? So why would a whole crowd travel to a festival hunting for Drakeo the Ruler? The answer runs back years, long before that December night, into one of the messiest webs in Los Angeles rap. Drakeo came up out of South Central, and his early buzz got a real push when DJ Mustard remixed his song Mr. Get Dough around 2015. Mustard happened to be one of YG's closest collaborators, and some people say Drakeo was even introduced to Mustard through YG's own brother. For a minute, it looked like Drakeo might slide right into that world, but he declined to fully sign to Mustard's 10 10 Summers imprint, and the relationship went cold. Around the culture, folks started seeing Drakeo as a stylistic rival to YG, almost a successor waiting in line. By the time he got hot, a lot of people in Los Angeles felt Drakeo had straight up taken the crown from YG when it came to who had the most motion in the whole city, and that kind of shift in the pecking order tends to make enemies out of people who used to run everything. That energy spilled into his beef with RJ, also known as Mr. LA, an Athens Park Bloods affiliate tied close to both YG and Mustard. Drakeo had Mr. Get Dough and later pushed Mr. Everything. RJ had Mr. LA, and the two traded records like Evil Knievel and RJ's Warning on top of Twitter shots and car flexes while RJ was out touring alongside YG. RJ later signed into the YG and Mustard 400 Summers orbit around 2017, which pulled YG's entire circle deeper into Drakeo's business. Then came the moment that turned rap friction into something far more dangerous. In December of 2016, a shooting at a party in Carson left an Inglewood family Gangster Bloods member named Davion Gregory, known as Red Bull, dead with others injured. Members of Drakeo's Stink team were there, and prosecutors charged Drakeo with murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy, arguing he had directed a plot aimed at RJ, who was not even present that night. Drakeo was never accused of pulling the trigger himself. He was acquitted of the major murder and conspiracy counts in 2019, but the district attorney refiled, and he eventually took a plea on a lesser charge of shooting from a vehicle with a gang enhancement. He walked free in November of 2020, after roughly 3 years locked up, a stretch where prosecutors tried to brand Stink Team a criminal street gang and used his own lyrics against him in court. That case hardened the hatred between Drakeo's people and Inglewood's blood sets, and it had nothing to do with a rap charge. Drakeo made it worse in some eyes by openly clowning traditional gang life and refusing to claim a set at all. When he got out, he came back swinging, dropping "Thank You for Using GTL" from behind bars, and then "The Truth Hurts" with a Drake feature once he was home. The comeback was real, and so was everything waiting for him on the other side of it. Early in 2021, Stink Team member Catchy the Great died in a car accident, and some opposing voices actually mocked it. Then in March of that year, YG pulled up on No Jumper, and without ever saying Drakeo's name, made his stance crystal clear about how he handles his issues. Drakeo answered that energy on Instagram Live with a threat of his own, warning that a certain rapper would get Swiss cheesed if he ran his mouth one more time. And he told YG straight up to unfollow him, saying flatly, "I don't like you, we don't rock." Later that year, he dropped Ingleweird, a diss aimed square at Inglewood and artists like Azchike and Rucci, mocking the area, the snitching talk, and their authenticity. Weeks before the festival, YG affiliate Slim 400 was killed, which added another layer of online speculation and cranked the heat even higher. Even though no direct public link to Drakeo was ever established, Coop even testified about an earlier run-in outside a recording studio where YG walked up on Drakeo and asked, "What's up with all that internet stuff?" An encounter Coop said he personally had to defuse. Street lore around that same studio has claimed for years that Drakeo once shot IG in the hip during an earlier run-in, though that piece has never been confirmed by either side. Coop testified that all of this history, the disses, the interviews, and the near misses, led him to warn Drakeo before the festival that he needed more security, because there was a real chance the two camps would cross paths as Drakeo left the stage or the festival grounds. That warning hits even harder in hindsight, because Whack 100 later said Drakeo had been told to be careful by multiple people and still moved that night without his usual security pattern locked in. Now flash forward to today, because the case that went ice cold just got hot again. Around July 23, 2026, the California Highway Patrol, backed by a Burbank SWAT team, executed a search warrant at a Burbank commercial property connected to YG as part of the ongoing homicide investigation. YG was there, got briefly detained during the search, and was later released. That same evening, he still stepped on stage for a Versus battle against the Game, where he told the crowd he almost did not make it. The deposition excerpts hit the public right after that raid, stacking one heavy blow on top of another. This is where the story splits into two different courtrooms. Drakeo's son, his relatives, and Cooper himself sued Live Nation, C3 Presents, Bobby D Presents, and several security contractors in February of 2022, arguing the companies failed to protect Drakeo from an attack that everyone could see coming. YG is not a defendant in that lawsuit. All parties are due back in court on August 13th for hearings on motions to dismiss brought by Bobby D Presents and Live Nation. The internet, of course, did what the internet does. Seti Nash ran with "It's over for YG." Other channels pushed the law finally catching up angle. DJ Academics floated the idea that authorities might be building toward a bigger RICO-style case and told YG's camp to lay low. And No Jumper, a platform with a deep history with both artists, pushed the story to hundreds of thousands. Smaller channels like Trap News Networks ran the same three details on a loop: the hazel eyes, the ski mask, and that front and center line, until they were plastered across everybody's feed. Plenty of people were not buying the identification though. Over on Reddit its hip-hop heads, the top comments roasted the whole Hazel Eyes through a ski mask angle, joking that no courtroom is convicting a man off a pair of gorgeous eyes and cracking that a stranger's eyes behind a mask could belong to just about anybody. Others argued the man with the blade could have been a bodyguard nicknamed Gloves rather than YG at all. And that skepticism points right at the part the dramatic titles skate past. What Coop gave was sworn testimony inside a civil case about festival security, and it has never been tested in a criminal trial. That civil track is really about holding the festival and its security companies liable for what they let happen, where the standard of proof is lower and the account has not been picked apart under cross-examination the way a criminal courtroom would demand. Cooper never claimed to watch the blade actually go into Drakeo's neck, and he said he himself was never stabbed. No video has surfaced of YG delivering that fatal wound, and nearly 5 years later, not a single person has been charged in the killing. YG has denied all of it, most recently on his 2026 song We Know the Truth, where he raps that he pulled up to perform, heard afterward that someone had been stabbed, and rejects the idea that he ordered or joined the attack. So where does all of that leave everybody? It leaves a named eyewitness placing a masked man he swears was YG at the center of an armed ambush, a fresh search warrant that says investigators are still digging, and a family that has spent 5 years waiting on a real answer. Whether the August hearings, the CHP investigation, or that deposition finally cracks the case open is anybody's guess right now. This story is bigger than any one headline, and the streets have already made up their mind about how they feel. Rest in peace to Drakeo the Ruler, and we will keep you posted the second this one moves.